Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Daddy of 'em All podcast, where we talk about everything Cheyenne Frontier Days. My name's Chancey Williams. I'm a Wyoming native from Moorcroft, Wyoming. Rodeo cowboy, now country singer.
A part of Western history, a legend walking tall. Cheyenne Frontier Days, the daddy of 'em all.
On today's episode, we'll be talking with Bob Romeo, chairman of Romeo Entertainment Group, about Cheyenne Frontier Days nights and all the work that goes in planning all the night concerts at Cheyenne Frontier Days. Bob Romeo.
Chancey, thanks.
Yeah.
Chancey, country music star.
Well, thank you. Sure appreciate
That's
that.
from Wyoming.
That's right. Born and raised in Wyoming.
I meet a lot of good Wyoming people.
That's right.
So a little bit about Romeo Entertainment Group. We're a company that my father started when he came back from the Korean War. And he took a slant on the business where we represent clients. We don't represent artists. We represent clients and advocate for our clients. And that is how we've built the business. Today, I think we're doing about $72 million in talent. We've got about 250 events that we do, Cheyenne being one of them. And it's been a great business. It's been fun, and we have a great relationship with our clients, and it's been a good run.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people around Wyoming know about Cheyenne Frontier Days. You know, it's a rodeo background, but, you know, also what goes along with Cheyenne is the night concerts, you know, which rodeo and music are both entertainment. So can you go into depth a little bit about like how long you've booked Cheyenne Frontier Days and the night shows?
Boy, I think, Chancey, it's been over 35 years now. I got a call years ago from a gentleman named Vern Felton, who was a night show chairman. And he came down and saw me in Imperial, Nebraska, Chase County Fair, saw what we did, and he called me. He said, "Hey, I'd like to give you a couple of nights to book at Cheyenne." So he gave me the Monday and Tuesday, which are the two toughest days. Didn't put any thoughts in my head, just said, "Bring me two good acts." So I happened to score. I bought a guy who just got his foot in the door, a guy named Randy Travis, and a group named Sawyer Brown. And they were both great successes on a Monday and Tuesday night. After that, they gave me the whole show to book. So that was sort of how I got in the door, was thanks to Sawyer Brown, Mark Miller, and thanks to Randy Travis. They're the ones that sort of opened the door for me. And over the years, we've had almost everybody play Frontier Days. One of the stories I love telling is about Mr. Brooks, Garth Brooks. We got onto Garth when he first came out and had him on a bunch of fair dates. He played Cheyenne. I think he played Cheyenne twice for me. And the last time he was here, I said, "Hey, Garth, in 1996, it's our 100th coming up. Would you come back?" He shook my hand and said, "Romeo, I'll be back." And about that time, this was about 94, as you know, he was blowing up. And he was blowing up internationally. He was a huge international star and doing
Right.
international tours. So we're coming up on 96. I get a call from his brother, Kelly Brooks. Kelly says, "Bob, Garth said we're coming to Cheyenne. What day do you want him?" I said, "Kelly, what day do you want to do?" He says, "How about Monday night?" I said, "Monday night would be great." So usually a hard night to sell. So we get Garth, we get that all set up, and we go down the road. We finally make the announcement. We had George, we had Garth, we had Reba, we had Brooks and Dunn, had everybody on the lineup. One person we didn't have, and I felt bad, and God rest his soul, Chris Ledoux.
Man.
So I called Chris. I said, "Chris," I feel terrible. I said, "We've got the 100th book, and I don't have a headline slot open, and I don't feel right using you as an opening act."
Right.
I said, "But would you consider making a cameo appearance with Garth for the 100th? "Well, if that's okay with Garth, that's all right with me." Well, call Garth. "Garth, I've had this thought," and told him about it. He said, "Well, that would be fine with me if it's okay with Chris." I said, "It's okay with both you guys. Can I do it?" He said, "Yes, you can do it." So went ahead, made a deal with Chris Ledoux. As we get closer to the show, Kelly calls me and says, "Hey, how you doing in Cheyenne?" I said, "Kelly, we're sold out. Sold out of every night show, sold out of every rodeo." He said, "Well, do you mind if we pick up and play 3 or 4 days in Denver?" I said, I don't care. So Garth consequently played 4 days in in Denver. So on his first night of the show there, this is pre-cell phones, he had his pager. So he tells the crowd, he said, now listen, if my pager goes off, I got to leave because I'm expecting my third child. That took about 30 seconds to get to Cheyenne saying that Garth was canceling.
Oh, man.
So in this story, there were two people, gentlemen named who you both know, both of them, TK Kimbrell.
That's right.
I believe you worked with TK
Yeah, my
for
old
a while.
boss.
Your old boss. So TK managed Chris and the agent Steve Dahl, who I think you knew from Monterey.
Yep.
Well, they were up here. So I get a call, come up to the Contract Acts building. So I go up there, and the nice show chairman and the general chairman are just beating my ass because there's no signed contract for Garth. Garth shook my hand, said I'd be there. There was never a contract issued on the show. So when they heard the rumor that he might cancel, they were like, well, if he had a contract, that couldn't happen. You don't have a contract. This is all your fault. I said, guys, I don't care if we have a contract or not. If Garth says he's going home,
Right.
who's going to stop him?
Right.
So TK heard that conversation. He was in the next room. So he gets on the phone and calls Chris. Chris, Romeo sideways here. Bring the band. And they were playing in Texas. It was like a 14-hour drive.
So Chris was just going to fly up and do the cameo.
I bought tickets for him and Peg to fly in and just do the cameo. So TK says, bring the band. So they truck all night long. They get here. Because if Garth canceled, about the only person that could replace Garth is Chris Ledoux.
The only one that could replace Garth at Cheyenne's Chris.
I mean, so Chris is here. We're backstage. And needless to say, the phone call never happened. The show went on. And when Chris walked on that stage, Chancey, you know how you just feel you created magic?
Yeah.
And it was the crowd was deafening. It was so loud. I mean, TK and I and Steve were backstage crying because we knew what this meant to Chris.
I wish I could have been here as like the 100th, you know. And Chris walking out there, I bet it was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So he comes off the stage. Now the four of us are crying. And he looks at me, he says, Romeo, you don't know what you've done. He said, this was my number one spot on my bucket list that I wanted to do, was to play on the main stage at Cheyenne, and to play it with Garth Brooks is the top of my list. So we all go in the bus, knock on the bus door. It's Kelly Brooks. Who do I pay for Chris? Chris says, hey, Romeo paid me. So he comes to me. I said, no, I'm just doing it as a favor to Cheyenne and as a favor to your brother. Well, I got to pay someone. I got to give this envelope to someone. Well, so Chris says, hold on a second. So Chris gets on the phone, makes a phone call. About 5 minutes later, this cowboy comes knocking on the bus door. And I mean, your typical Wyoming, if you had to take a picture of a Wyoming cowboy coming off a working ranch, this was the guy. The hat was all messed up, missing teeth, holes in his shirt, comes in. Chris gives him the envelope. Thanks, Chris. Guy walks off. Well, Chris, who was that? Oh, that's some of my friends from the Cowboy Crisis Fund. Okay. So now TK and I are sitting. I'm like, well, I wonder how much we gave him. So we go trace Kelly down. I said, Kelly, if you don't mind me asking, what was in the envelope? $40,000. I said, well, Chris's friend's going to have a great night tonight. That was a windfall. But that started the relationship really with Chris and Garth.
Yeah.
So fast forward, Tom calls me. It's the 125th. We're going to honor Chris Ledoux. I sent an email to Garth. Hey, Garth, 125th's coming. We're going to honor Chris. Would you be willing to help? I'm in. That's all I get. I'm in.
That's great.
So I call his manager, Bob Doyle. I said, Bob, I think I got a Garth show. We're at Cheyenne. We're going to dedicate it to Chris. And I emailed Garth, and Garth said, he's in. We didn't discuss money. I said, no, I'm calling you. He said, well, let's just make it favorite nations, and we'll move forward. Okay, that's fine, which means he'll get paid as much as the highest price act gets paid. So that all came about because of what happened at the 100th. So Garth gets up here, he does the dedication, he does the show. It's just a magical evening. I mean,
Right.
it's just one of those things that it's hard to create those type of moments. And I
Yeah.
think we've tried in Cheyenne over the years to create moments. Blake Shelton, when he brought his wife out, Gwen, to sing some songs,
Right.
try to create those surprise elements in the show.
Yeah.
When it comes together, you try to seize those opportunities. But it definitely worked on the Garth scenario. And again, handshake deal.
Right.
No contract existed on it.
Yeah, and I think those artists like Chris and Garth, and myself and a lot of others too understand the history of like the Western way of life and like this is the center of it. So I think Cheyenne Frontier Days, I would assume to Garth and to Chris and to myself, like this means the world to us. So whatever it takes to make those moments at Cheyenne Frontier Days, like the 100th, like the 125th, and hopefully someday I'll make some of those too. It's super special because it's the biggest rodeo in the world.
Well, you've already made it special.
Yeah,
You're
I mean,
one of what? You're one of two acts
yeah,
that
that's true.
rodeoed and has played the main stage. You and Chris Ledoux.
I know, and that's why Cheyenne's super special to me. It's my dad won Cheyenne in 1971, rookie bronc riding. So all growing up, we thought Cheyenne was the best thing ever, and it was. And then getting to ride there was unbelievable. I'd have never dreamed those days coming out of the chutes that I'd be singing here someday.
And it was the same thing Chris said to us.
Yeah.
He says, I never thought I'd be here, that this would happen the way it happened.
Yeah, because back I think when you're rodeoing, that's all you're thinking about. You're probably gonna think you're gonna rodeo forever. So I mean, remember nodding in the chutes, looking out there. Would have never guessed I'd sing at Cheyenne Frontier Days, but it's such a magical place, and like you said, those moments happen with Garth and Chris, and Chris.
Well, and Chancey with you.
Yeah.
You're the next generation to keep that legacy alive.
Well, it's super special, and you've probably seen about every act play Cheyenne Frontier Days over the years.
We've had a great relationship over the years with Reba and her family ties to here. George Strait. George has played it so many times
Yeah.
for us, our late friend Toby Keith.
I know.
I believe you had a cameo appearance with Toby
did.
Keith. Tell
Yeah,
us
Toby,
tell
man.
us about that.
Toby was such a hero of mine. When I was working for TK, TK managed Toby, so got to know them well. Drove Toby a lot, and yeah, Toby flew in one night. We were playing the beer tent, and we'd been done. And I got to my hotel room, and it was 2:30 or 3 in the morning. The hotel phone rings, and they said Toby Keith's in the lobby, and I was like, I don't buy it. So I was like, put him on, and I'd maybe had a few. So I was like, it was Toby. And he's like, hey, get down here. And Toby really liked my old van. I had this rodeo van, 95 Chevy van that I had in Nashville, and drove Toby to award shows in it. And so Toby's like, let's go cruise around Cheyenne at 3 in the morning. I was like, all right. So he got his security guard, Jason, drove. We buzzed around and ran out of beer. And Toby's like, let's go get some more beer. And I said, well, they don't sell beer in Wyoming after 2. He's like, shoot. He's like, I know where there's some beer on my plane. So we drive the van to the airport and key into the tarmac and nose my van up to his jet and continue to have a few that night, maybe till morning. And, I was sitting there with Toby, and I'd known him real well. He treated me like a son. He was so nice. I was like, Toby, this is kind of my backyard. What do you think about me singing Should Have Been a Cowboy with you tomorrow? And I was just kind of joking. And then he said, be there tomorrow. So I went to bed and woke up the next morning. I was like, man, I don't know if I dreamt that or what, but I think I might be singing with Toby. So I text Kurt, his booking agent. I says, was Toby serious about me singing with him? And he said, yeah, he's always serious. He's not going to lie to you. So it happens. So I get there and wait inside stage and don't know where I'm going to come in. I'm nervous as heck. I'm in, Cheyenne Frontier Days, which is my home, and singing with one of the biggest superstars in the world, his biggest song ever. Like, don't screw this up, And so we did it. Toby called me out, and I got to sing with Toby at Cheyenne, and I sure miss him, but that's one of my favorite memories of Cheyenne.
Was that your first performance on the big stage?
No, we got to open the first few years. We played the beer tent I've looked it up today. We played it 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And so, when we started the band, we kind of had to learn how to play music and how to put on shows and how to write songs. So the beer tent kind of gave us our foundation of how to play music, I guess. We're just a bunch of cowboys from Wyoming. We didn't know anything about the music business or playing, but so we played there for 8 years, and it really set the foundation. During that time, we asked contract acts, like, how do we get in doing opening act stuff? And I think it was 2012, they called and said, would you like to open Cheyenne? We said, oh, absolutely. It's a dream come true. And they said, well, it's going to be from Earl Haggard. And we're like, well, And then I for sure thought it was a dream. So the very first time playing the main stage at Cheyenne Frontier Days, which I love, was with Merle Haggard. And so we
So
got to open for Merle, and then the next year we opened for Dwight Yoakam, and then the third year in a row we got to open for Gary Allen, three of my
yep,
favorite artists. And so that's, building our brand from a beer tent band to a main stage band was our goal, and I remember the ninth year when they called wanted us to play the beer tent. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I wanted to tell them no. We knew as an artist, if I ever wanted to be considered a main stage act, we couldn't be known as the beer tent band anymore, which got us to where we were, but we had to move
had to
on.
move
So
on.
they
So a
called 'em-
funny Merle Haggard story
Yeah.
on the night you played. So Merle was contracted to do 75 minutes. So I don't know if you recall or not, but 55 minutes he came walking off stage. So I'm at the bottom of the stairs. I'm about ready to say, Merle. So he comes up, he says, Romeo, not bad for a guy with one lung. I said, good job, Merle. That was the end of that. Didn't even have the heart to say you were a little short. How do you say that to Merle Haggard?
Right. You probably don't remember this, but when we opened for Merle that year, we were pretty nervous, I would say real nervous. And so I think he gave us 30 minutes or 35 minutes. And we had this set down to the minute, to the second. So we're like, all right. And obviously we probably played a little fast, and we finished like at 31 minutes. And I got off stage and I was like, whew, that was good. And you're like, you shorted me like 4 minutes. So you're like, should I take that out of your check? And I was like, and I didn't really know you that well. Then I was like, oh man, we just made Bob Romeo mad. We were short. Told the band we were
Hey,
short.
I
4
wish you'd
minutes.
have done an extra 25 to make up for Merle.
If we'd have known, we would have.
Uh,
Would you say booking acts today is harder than it was back when you started at Cheyenne Frontier Days? Because I know like every year the list comes out, and maybe from both ends of the arena, the rodeo, but the entertainment side, I see people sometimes complain about the acts. Or like, can you go into like how hard it is getting the type of acts you get at Cheyenne?
well, it's a good question, Chancey. I mean, we sort of made a shift, probably about 10 years ago, where we thought we should try to bring in some outside of the country
Sure.
genre format. And that was a big discussion. A lot of the old chairmen and stuff really felt Cheyenne's a Western event. It needs to be country acts. And there was a group of people that felt we need to broaden our horizons to bring new people to the sport of rodeo through the use of talent by trying to bring in some different type of an act. The first act we brought in that was a pop act was the Beach Boys, and sold out. And I think that was when Cheyenne realized, okay, with the right act, we can do that crossover business.
Right.
And then we brought in REO Speedwagon, we brought in Chicago, and I'll never forget 4 years ago, had a chance to buy Post Malone.
Yeah. I remember that.
So I get it done. I called Tom. I said, Tom, great news. We got Post Malone done. Well, the minute they saw Post picture,
Right.
I could hear the gulping like, who's this guy? I said, Post Malone. It's hot. The kids are going to love it. And I think if Tom was here with us, I think Tom would say it brought a segment of people to Wyoming that he felt have never been here. And it brought a large segment of people to the rodeo that had not seen the rodeo, that
Right.
came up for the weekend. And that's what we were trying to accomplish with that. And, of course, this year we got MGK playing, we've got some
Right.
different acts other than country. And that's by design to try to bring
Right.
new blood into the sport of rodeo, bring new blood into Cheyenne Frontier Days.
And how fast did Post Malone sell out? Wasn't it like
Oh, it's like
in
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know it's tricky because you think it's just a rodeo, but rodeo people don't just listen to country music, and people from
Those
Wyoming.
cowboys listen to classic rock.
They
and they
listen to
listen to a
everything.
lot of rock. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's smart. Like me and Tom were talking about earlier today, to build the rodeo, to make it long lasting and forever, like you need that younger generation coming up for those late shows. And me and Tom both rodeoed, and he asked me today, is like, when you were 22, did you sit and watch the whole rodeo? And we're like, no, you come up kind of for the nightlife.
Yeah.
You ride in your event and then you do other things. But like getting those people from outside of the state of Wyoming, like Denver and stuff, those younger generations trained that like, this is a really fun night. The concert with Post Malone was really fun. When they grow up, they're going to maybe bring their kids to the rodeo. And so like, it's you guys have a plan in place, which everybody, that's why I wanted to let everybody know how hard it is booking acts, and those big acts are playing all over the country and routing and stuff, but it's,
Well, then, we got to try to stay on the cutting edge.
right,
So, for example, last year, Zach Bryan.
right.
So my son, RJ, who runs the business, says, "Dad, you got to bring Zach Bryan to Cheyenne." Who's Zach Bryan? Up and coming act. Call Tom. Who's Zach Bryan? I said, Tom, RJ, and the younger staff here feels that's somebody we got to buy. He said, well, I'll roll with you. You haven't been wrong yet. So we buy him. That sells out in an hour. And I think you were down at the show.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this earlier. It was amazing to see 22,500 people singing every song to a guy that's never had a song on country radio.
It was unbelievable.
It was.
Me and Brooke came over, and Paul Fleming's like, I can get you guys tickets. So we got right up front. I was like, I didn't know one Zach Bryan song at the time, but the place is sold out.
Yeah.
And he goes into his show, and literally, like you said, everybody in the stands, I think I was the only one that wasn't singing along.
Two of us.
I was like, how does everybody know all these songs? But like you said, that brought a whole new light to Cheyenne Frontier Days. A lot of those people may have never been here before. They were coming to see Zach Bryan. So now that they got the experience, the Western way of life, Cheyenne Frontier Days, seeing Zach Bryan, they'll probably be back.
And I think that's why we see our rodeo attendance increasing.
Sure.
Because I think they are coming back. They realize it's an affordable event. They realize it's a family-friendly event.
Right.
They feel pretty safe here. And I think that's why the shows are doing well. That's why the rodeo's doing well.
Yeah. It's quite the event. And so would you say the Garth story is your favorite story, Cheyenne? Do you have any other great memories of booking acts at Cheyenne Frontier Days?
There's been a lot of them, a lot of Toby Keith stories. So Toby, last time he was here, I said, Toby, we got to cut back on that Crown Royal before the show. All right. I won't have any Crown Royal. So he gets up on stage. He's walking up on stage. He got a bottle of Crown. What's he doing? So he gets up on stage. He says, yeah, that promoter told me I couldn't drink before the show, but he didn't say anything about drinking during the show. And he managed to finish that whole bottle of Crown Royal.
That's what I loved about Toby. He did what he wanted.
Oh, he said during the show. I'm just sitting back laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's just a character.
Yeah.
George Strait, last year he played here, it was raining and it was cold. It was like 40 degrees and rain. And it started the night of ZZ Top, the night before. It started raining then, rained all through the night, all that next day. So Strait's people show up. It's raining, cold. What do we got to do? It's supposed to rain all day. I don't know. I got to come up with some idea. So we build a stage on top of the stage. We go out to the Air Force Base and we get like these jet engine heaters. And we ran tubing and we were blowing the hot air in between the, to dry off the stage. And George is sitting there on the bus. What are we going to do, Romeo? I said, well, George, the people are pouring in. They want a show. So I guess we got to give them a show. And I mean, Chancey, it was a Wyoming night. You could see your breath. It was that cold out there.
Yeah.
So, another interesting story. And when I started working here for the first 25 years, it was just a handshake. So when I got my ass chewing on Garth Brooks and Chris Ledoux, I reminded the chairman, I said, if a handshake is good enough for me to book your talent, I think a handshake for Garth showing up is as good. So in the office of the Contract Act building, you've seen it. It's that picture of Chris and Garth shaking hands. And that's the symbol behind that picture.
Yeah.
It's the history behind that picture is that was all
the
done. The
cowboy way, yeah.
Chris Ledoux.
Yep.
Handshake, phone call to Chris. Chris, will you be there? I'll be there, Romeo. Phone call.
That's great.
And back in the early days when we started booking Cheyenne, and, this goes back before fax machines, before internet, before cell phones. So many of the contracts were, hey, I need you to play Cheyenne on this day. Okay, we'll be there. Hell, the contract wouldn't show up until 2 months after the show.
Right.
So, you really had to rely on your relationships with the artists and your reputation. And if you didn't have a good reputation, you had a problem buying acts because they didn't know if they wanted to work for you. I remember one time We had somebody here in Cheyenne, and they had to cancel. And so I'm on the route books looking, and I think it was the Oak Ridge boys were in South Dakota. I'm like, God, how can I get a hold of them? So I called the Highway Patrol in South Dakota. I said, if you see some buses coming down the interstate, would you pull them over and ask them to call me? One of the troopers found them, pulled them over. They get to a truck stop, payphone, call me, Romeo, what do you need? I said, I need you to detour and come to Cheyenne because I got a cancellation. You need to be here tomorrow. And
That's
they
amazing.
literally at a truck stop in South Dakota, turned around, got their buses detoured here and did a show.
Oh, that's a great story.
That's how it was done 25 years
Right.
ago.
Just had to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as not having a show. We've never not had a show.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
and then, our weather challenges,
Oh yeah.
I remember sitting out here with Charlie Daniels. We're on the bus and we get this hailstorm that lasted for like 40 minutes. Just hit Charlie. Romeo, is this usual? I said, Charlie, in Wyoming, as you know, anything can happen
Right.
with the weather. And Charlie's another act that played here, I don't know how many times, 10 or 11
Right.
times. I mean, he loved playing Cheyenne. He
No, he fit it.
represented the spirit
Right.
of that cowboy and that country music legend.
For sure.
He was another person who, George Strait, Garth Brooks, Chris
Right.
Ledoux, they just show that history and that legend of the cowboy spirit.
Right.
You're now the new generation
Yeah.
to carry on that cowboy legacy as it relates to Cheyenne.
Yeah.
George is, slowing down. We've lost Toby, we've lost Charlie
I know.
Daniels.
Well, and I always hope other artists that play it look at it like I do, like every time we've got the call to play Cheyenne, it's the biggest call of the year, Everybody has their bucket list of places to play, and everybody's like, where's your bucket list? I'm like, it's always still number one Cheyenne, just because it's the biggest rodeo in the state, well, in the nation, and then it's the biggest stage an artist can play. So all growing up, ever since I quit rodeo, I was like, how do we get on that main stage? And so
And a lot of acts, Chancey, as you say, how difficult is it to buy for Frontier Days?
Right.
Half the acts look at it as it's just a date.
right,
The other half, the artists we book, have a reverence toward the history of Cheyenne.
right,
And Cheyenne does a great job, even within our little contract acts building, of keeping that history alive and
For
keeping
sure.
it out there and having some of those memorable photographs in the building there that
Yeah,
help
and
tell the story.
And I always see artists, you'll see them in concert somewhere else, and they'll be wearing their Cheyenne Frontier Days buckle. So like, maybe some people don't know that Cheyenne gives you a buckle if you play the main stage. And to me, I mean, obviously, because I rodeoed here, is super special. And I see other artists wearing them, but I never got the the buckle from rodeoing, which I always wanted because Dad had it. And
Well, you should come back and try it again.
yeah, maybe I could work out a little bit.
Matter of fact, Garth wears his buckle on award shows,
Yeah.
wears it all the time.
So, us having 4 of those now, they're my favorite buckles, and I have a lot of buckles growing up from riding broncs and love those too. But now that I'm an entertainer, not a rodeo cowboy anymore, like these music buckles mean the most to me. So I always think, I hope those other artists, when they get these buckles, are like, man, this is super special.
So let's segue a little bit into about you a little bit.
Okay.
So clearly I know you're from Wyoming.
Yep.
And you've had the great honor of playing the Grand Ole Opry 3 times.
Yep.
Which is to me, that makes you a country star.
Well, I appreciate that.
When
And we've just kind of, chopped away at this music thing the hard way. I always tell people, I grew up on a ranch in Moorcroft, so I didn't know anything about music. And I always tell people I know more about rodeo and ranching than I do music, but I just ended up in music. But we had to earn it the hard way. And like I said, I feel like Cheyenne Frontier Days is one of those foundation things that started us. The first year they booked us for the beer tent way back when, they said, we only hire bands 1 year in a row for this. And we said, okay, but we'll do our best job. And so then they called the second year and said, all right, never 2 years in a row. I was like, well, then 8 years later,
So you set the record.
I hate telling people we played 8 years because I don't like it dating me, but that Cheyenne Frontier Days is kind of where we got our start, because people from all over the country would come to Cheyenne Frontier Days and see us in the beer tent. And back then we were a cover band, but it got us to where we are today, and we transitioned to that. And about the Grand Ole Opry, like if you'd have told me when I was playing the beer tent back in the days, like one day you'll play the Grand Ole Opry, I would never believe you. So it's been a journey for real for us that is unbelievable. We're just a bunch of ranch kids from Wyoming that are now national touring artists, you know, but we call Wyoming home, and we still come home every week.
So I got to call bullshit on your video.
Okay. Which video?
So you have a video of you walking into the Grand Ole Opry.
Okay.
Now that old security guard shaking your hand.
Yeah.
Well, that son of a bitch throws everybody out. So I know he had to be teed up on who you were, because he throws everyone out.
Yeah, no, he gave me my reserve parking sign. So when it's your debut, they give you a reserve parking sign. So like I said, you know, I never dreamed where music would take us. I just thought I would rodeo for a long time, and then started playing the beer tent and things all across like the 5-state area.
Well, so now I also see that you're going to play with Ian Munsing down at Fiddlers.
Yeah, Red Rocks.
Red Rocks,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to play Red Rocks. It's been on the bucket list, you know, and so, you know, obviously the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman, Red Rocks. My first always, though, still is Cheyenne Frontier Days, but yeah.
That's a great play at Red Rocks, and
Yeah,
those
June
guys
5th.
are so good down there. Matter of fact, when you're down there, say hello to Brent Ferdisi for me and tell him Bob Romeo sends his best from Cheyenne, because we share a lot of acts with them.
Yeah.
That play Denver and play here.
Yeah. Well, if you've never been to Cheyenne Frontier Days and you're just listening to this podcast, come see it. You can't explain it, even in our podcast, of how neat it is, and especially how special it is to people that have been here for a lot of years, like Bob and I. But come see Cheyenne Frontier Days. Tune in for the next episode of Everything Cheyenne Frontier Days.
Part of Western history, a legend walking tall.